You inhale a full chest of water, completely, all of it. The process can no longer be stopped. A kind of strip appears, like old photographic film, and the slides start moving from right to left. A feeling arises. Finally, I've died. It's like sitting in a barrel for 50 years and at last being let out. I saw my heel, and it was gigantic. And I myself was smaller than an eye lens. It's a relief you can't feel at all during life. You only feel it after leaving the body. There was all-consuming love there. At 11 years old, you don't understand a damn thing, but you're ready to run back there.
The settlement of Obozersky, a quiet place where time seems to stand still. But for an 11-year-old boy, an ordinary trip to the lake turned in an instant into a journey beyond the physical world. What began as an accident near an underwater drop-off ended not simply in clinical death. As his body filled with water, his consciousness recorded something science is still trying to decipher: the mechanics of memory, the structure of parallel worlds, and what the human body looks like through the eyes of a being the size of a grain of sand. Today, we will reconstruct the chronology of those 10 minutes. This is a story about why death can turn out to be the most pleasant event in life, and why, after returning, this world is never the same again. Nothing unusual was happening that day. A typical summer, a typical settlement, a typical lake where locals come to swim. Children wade into the water without fear. Adults stay nearby. The boy is 11 years old. He's not doing anything risky. He steps into the water exactly where everyone else does. The shore seems close. The bottom is familiar. Everything looks safe. But beneath the surface, there is a place invisible from the shore. A sudden underwater drop-off. The depth begins abruptly. No gentle slope. At some point, his foot loses contact with the ground. His body falls downwards. It happens instantly. There is no time to be afraid. No time to understand. The first attempt to breathe, reflexive. And instead of air, water enters the lungs. The body doesn't recognize the mistake. It keeps doing what it was made to do. Breathing starts again. And again. Water. Inhale. Water. Exhale. Water. This process cannot be stopped. You cannot decide not to breathe. The body does not obey the will. A scream emerges, but it dies inside. The sound does not escape. Panic here is not fear. It is a physiological failure, as if the system continues to function while ignoring reality. The lungs fill completely, not in parts, not in waves, entirely. He sinks under the water. The depth is only about 2 meters. But the distance to the surface no longer matters. He thrashes upward instinctively, unaware of exactly what he's doing. Someone is nearby. Hands find his body. He grabs onto their legs. His movements are sharp and uncoordinated. He wraps his arms and legs around the person and pulls upward as if onto a support. For a few seconds, he manages to rise. His head is almost at the surface. The water is no longer over the crown of his head. The shore is very close. It seems that salvation is just a step away. But at that very moment, breathing finally stops. Air no longer flows out. The chest moves, but inside, there is emptiness. The lungs no longer release. They are filled with water. The body continues the cycle, mechanically, without meaning. And in that moment, a thought enters consciousness. It is not sharp, not hysterical. It sounds calm, almost detached.
Then this thought appeared. I'm going to die now. I'm going to die now. I'm going to die now. I'm going to die now.
This phrase causes no emotional surge. It doesn't speed up the heart. It simply registers what is happening. After it, the frantic motion disappears. The attempts to change something vanish. Understanding comes clearly. Breathing is already useless. The body still takes breaths, but this is no longer a struggle. It's inertia. The thought repeats again and again, evenly, monotonously. The world begins to narrow, sounds disappear. Only the sensation of water inside and the heaviness of one's own body remain. Control is completely lost, and it is precisely at this point that the next stage begins. At the moment when control disappears entirely, the first shift occurs. The thought of death does not vanish, it remains, but it stops being the center of what's happening. Consciousness seems to detach from the body. The focus turns inward and then to the side. And that is when movement appears. Before it, a strip emerges. Not a dream image, not a burst of imagination. It looks like old photographic film, flat, sharp, moving from right to left. On it are separate fragments of life, not sequential, not in order. This is not the whole life. These are selective moments, scenes torn from different times. Each fragment is like a separate slide. It can move on, it can stop, but most importantly, it can be entered. The flat surface stops being flat. It becomes a passage. And in the next moment, he finds himself inside one of the events. This is not a memory from the outside, not an image being observed. It is presence. He is not watching himself. He is there again. The body is felt, space is felt. The world around is alive. Light, warmth, air. Sometimes sunlight, sometimes light rain, sometimes dust in the air. There is wind, there is temperature. There is the sensation of a surface beneath the feet. Every moment is filled with details, not symbols, not meanings, sensations. There are no questions about why this particular event appears, no understanding of why it is shown. There is no analysis here, no judgment, no attempt to fix anything. You can linger, you can live, you can move on. The choice happens effortlessly, as if the decision is made not by thought. The strip continues to move, slowly, calmly. Events replace one another. Some are very brief, some stretch longer. Everything happens without emotion, but also without emptiness. This is not happiness, not joy, not sadness. It is a state of presence without the need to feel anything. And all this time, in the background, a thought continues to exist. Not loudly, not intrusively, like a distant sound. I'm gonna die now. It no longer frightens. It does not interfere. It simply exists somewhere near the strip. And at this very moment, a new process begins in the body. Something that can no longer be ignored. After the strip, attention returns to the body again, but not as before. This is not pain and not fear, but the sensation of processes happening on their own. At first, a light tingling appears. It starts at the farthest points. The fingers, the feet, the ears. The tingling is not sharp and not painful. It feels like a weak electric current running along the surface of the skin. The sensation slowly intensifies and spreads. The body seems to lose its clear boundaries and becomes a single field of sensation. Gradually, all these signals begin to converge into one area. The center is located around the solar plexus. The closer they gather, the less the body obeys. The arms stop feeling separate. The legs no longer respond. Movement disappears completely. Only inner perception remains. This is not a loss of consciousness. On the contrary, consciousness becomes extremely clear. All sensations concentrate at a single point, as if something is being compressed. And in the next moment, a sharp rupture occurs. The connection with the body is severed not gradually, but instantly. There is no sense of living step by step. There is a distinct transition. At this moment, a clear understanding of what is happening appears.
A feeling arises. Well, finally I'm dead. It's a relief impossible to feel during life, as if you had sat in a barrel for 50 years and were finally released into freedom.
After that comes a feeling that is hard to put into words. It's not joy and not euphoria. It's relief, as if a constant pressure had disappeared, something you were used to and had stopped noticing, as if boundaries were removed, boundaries that had always been there, but were never felt directly. The body is no longer felt as a shell. There is no weight, no tension. Space is perceived differently. It has no shape and no direction. There is no up and no down. No distances in the usual sense. At the same time, the sense of one's own existence does not disappear. It becomes even clearer than before. He does not feel himself as a body, but he knows with absolute certainty that he exists, and this state feels final, not as an assumption, but as knowledge. There is nothing more that needs to be done. No need to breathe anymore. No need to maintain control. Everything has already happened. After separation, perception does not break off or dissolve. On the contrary, it becomes stable and focused. He begins to move away from the body. At first, by a small distance. 3 meters, 5 meters. This distance is not perceived visually, but internally as a change of position. A boundary appears in front of him. It does not look like a tunnel or a corridor. It is a plane. Beyond this plane lies the entire familiar world. It looks like an image, like a continuous broadcast, like a film that continues regardless of the observer. The passage happens without effort. He simply finds himself on the other side. It is here that space ceases to be familiar. There is no direction of movement. There is no point of reference. Light appears. At first, soft, warm, slightly yellowish. It does not blind or press in. Gradually, the light grows brighter. It seems to fill everything around. Within this light, movement is visible. Tiny particles, like dust in a sunbeam. They are multicolored and constantly in motion. These particles have no shape and do not form images on their own. They look like a potential medium, ready to reflect anything. There are no figures here, no voices, no presences in the usual sense. There is a feeling of complete neutrality in what is happening. Nothing is imposed, nothing is judged, and it is precisely in this space that an understanding appears. One he will later be able to put into words.
I understood very clearly then that this wasn't some place with ready-made images, not a tunnel and not beings waiting for you, but something more like an environment. As if there is a kind of space where nothing exists in advance, and it simply waits for you to bring something into it yourself. All those images people later describe, it seems to me, are simply assembled from this state.
The movement continues. He seems to fly farther, deeper into the light. But suddenly the direction changes. The turn happens sharply. Without explanation, the light begins to recede. A sensation of returning appears. He moves closer to the boundary again, to that same plane, and he understands that the process is not yet complete. The return begins abruptly, without preparation. Passing through the plane is felt instantly, like a change of layer. The first thing that appears is an intense sensation of heat. It contrasts with the previous state and immediately restores the sense of the world's density. He is above the water again, and immediately sees his body. The body is exactly where the submersion began. People are already pulling it toward the shore. Their movements are sharp, strained. He feels no anxiety. There is no urge to intervene. No understanding that something bad is happening to this body. Perception shifts. He moves closer, not from above, but from the side, almost at water level. At some point, attention locks onto a single point, the left heel. The scale distorts. The body seems enormous. The heel occupies almost the entire field of perception. The scale is unfamiliar, as if he himself has become tiny. He notices the smallest details, the texture of the skin, the pores, the lines. As the body is dragged along the bottom, sand rises from beneath the heel. Small stones swirl in the water and lift upward. Light reflects off them. Each glint is visible separately. The sight completely absorbs his attention. It does not feel strange or alarming. It feels beautiful. Nothing else matters. Not the people around, not the body itself. There is only the movement of sand and light, At this moment, an inner commentary appears, one he will later be able to describe in words.
What struck me the most was that I wasn't thinking at all about the fact that it was my body, or that something was happening to me. I was just looking at the heel. It was huge, and at the sand rising from beneath it. Those little stones were glinting in the sun, swirling in the water, and it was so beautiful and so calm that I just froze there, completely absorbed, and didn't want to look away.
In that moment, there is no sense of time. Seconds neither stretch nor disappear. Everything simply is. And it is precisely here that the next transition begins. The transition happens abruptly, not like waking up and not like a slow return, but like a sudden jolt, as if he were yanked back without warning. The space he was in disappears instantly, as if someone switched off the light. Instead of silence, heaviness. Instead of calm, pressure. Instead of a sense of freedom, compression from all sides. He is back in the body again, but the body feels chushim, motionless, unresponsive. The first sensation to return is cold, then pain. It arrives all at once, without build-up, as if all the nerves switched on simultaneously. His chest is squeezed so tightly it feels as though a massive stone has been placed on it. There is no air, and every attempt to inhale ends in emptiness. His consciousness thrashes, unable to understand where it is, or why everything has suddenly become so heavy again. He hears sounds, but cannot make out words. The voices are muffled, as if coming through a thickness of water or dense fabric. Someone is shouting, someone is calling his name, but the name feels choosing to him, as if it no longer belongs to him. He feels himself being shaken, turned over, feels something pressing on his chest, and each such movement responds with a flash of pain.
The strangest thing was that I didn't want to come back. Not because it was bad here, but because there it was calm and right. When I was pushed back in, I felt anger and confusion. I wanted to say for them to leave me there, but the body wouldn't listen. It felt like I was stuck inside something heavy, wet, and cold, and that I had to learn again how to breathe, how to live, and how to feel pain.
At some point, air burst into his chest, suddenly, painfully, with a rasp, as if his lungs were opening for the first time in their life. He vomited water, started coughing, and that coughing became the first sign that the body was working again. The world began to reassemble itself from fragments. Voices grew clearer, light grew brighter, and pain became real and specific. He was lying on the shore, surrounded by adults. Someone was holding his shoulders, someone kept telling him to breathe, and someone was crying openly without hiding it. For them, he had just returned from a place no one spoke about it out loud. For him, the return did not feel like rescue, but like a forced awakening after a very long and very deep sleep. He inhaled again, then again, and with each breath, the world finally reclaimed him. He survived. For those around him, the story ended there. They pulled him out of the water. He started breathing. They warmed him, took him home, and then everything gradually returned to its usual rhythm. Doctors spoke of hypothermia and shock. Adults repeated that he was lucky. His parents tried not to return to what had happened, as if the memory itself could bring danger back again. But inside him, nothing returned to the way it was before. The world looked the same, but it felt different, as if a thin, almost imperceptible film had appeared between him and reality. Sounds became quieter, colors less important, events less significant than before. He watched people and couldn't get rid of the feeling that they were all rushing somewhere, without understanding what exactly they were searching for. The memory of what he had experienced did not fade. It did not surface as a vivid image and did not repeat itself in dreams, but it was always present, like background knowledge that could not be pushed away. He knew there had been something there greater than just a feeling of calm, but he could not find words to describe it. Any attempt to tell it turned into fragments of phrases that sounded unconvincing even to himself.
I tried for a long time to explain what happened to me, but every time I felt that language was too primitive for that experience. It wasn't a vision or a fantasy. It was like returning home to a place you never even knew existed. After that, it became hard for me to perceive fear the way I used to, because I already knew that there was nothing frightening beyond it.
Over time, he stopped talking about it out loud. Not because he forgot, but because he realized that people were not hearing what he was trying to say. For them, it was a story about an accident. For him, it was the point after which the former certainty disappeared. The certainty that life is limited only to what is visible. He became more attentive to silence, to the pauses between words, to those moments that usually pass unnoticed. The thought of the end no longer frightened him, but a strange sense of responsibility appeared, as if he had returned for a reason. He did not know what this responsibility was, but he felt it constantly, as a reminder that once he stepped beyond the familiar boundary and came back. This story did not give him answers. It left questions. And it was those questions that stayed with him forever.